Hi, Bianca. Sorry, you're on mute.
There you go. Sorry. We're starting this morning with some technical difficulties. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I just want to share my screen, my presentation. I'm sure that everyone can see my PowerPoint presentation. So, yeah, good morning, everyone, once again. Welcome to today's webinar workshop. Ooh, just want to make sure, is my screen still visible?
Afraid it's gone all grey.
Set that. See, I'm somehow now logged out of my computer. Of course, this will happen. Is it better now? Can everyone see my screen again?
Yes.
Right, let's start again. So for the third time, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. Um, Welcome to, for availing yourself. The topic for today's webinar is AI in research, power, potential, and ethical pitfalls. And it's hosted by Feral, the NSSA, and Tessa. And then also please note that you can earn 2 CPD points, ethic points for attending this webinar. Please email your HBC's A number to this email address, and then we are going to just correspond that with the attendance list. And then we will send it through for your ethics points. So please make sure that you email your HBC's A number if you require ethic points for this webinar. Then also, you will see that there's a question and answer box at the bottom, and you are more than welcome to use that to post your questions while a speaker is presenting, and then we will answer your questions after the speaker has presented. We'll have some time for questions and answers. So also, yeah, please make it as engaging as possible. It's always, nice if it's like that. Then just allow me to also introduce and say something about the three entities that's responsible for today's webinar. So the first one is the Food Evolution Research Laboratory, and it's a virtual research facility within the School of Tourism and Hospitality at the University of Johannesburg. And Farrell is dedicated to translating scientific research into practical solutions to enhance daily nutrition, to mitigate poor dietary choices, and to address food insecurity and promote healthier societies. So they're also leveraging cutting-edge technologies such as mobile applications and extended reality. And Ferrell continues to advance research in food and nutrition. They also launched an extended reality lab at the School for Tourism and Hospitality, and further in reinforcing this commitment to innovation. So you can get more information on the website. You can also follow them on various social media platforms if you are interested. Then the second entity is TESA, the Tourism Educators of South Africa, and they are committed to advancing quality tourism and hospitality education in South Africa by fostering development, collaboration, and a positive image of the sector. So TESA also promotes the access to higher education and career opportunities. They encourage knowledge sharing among members to align education with industry needs and supports accreditation and recognition of qualifications as well. The organization represents member interests nationally and internationally and facilitates joint research and conferences, promotes collaboration in academic processes such as moderation and student support across different institutions. Then last but not least, the Nutrition Society of South Africa, or the NSSA. So the mission of the NSSA is to provide leadership and mentorship based on appropriate research in policy formulation, education, and training, and practice of nutrition through advocacy and dissemination of information. So the three aims of the NSSA is to advance the scientific study of nutrition, to promote objective dissemination of knowledge related to nutrition, and also to promote appropriate strategies for the improvement of nutritional well-being. So if you want to become a member of the Nutrition Society, you're welcome to scan this QR code and it will take you to the website that will assist you with the application process. So I'm just gonna, I'm sure that you all have your phones ready, so you're welcome to just scan that QR code. All right, so it's wonderful to see so many curious minds gathered virtually together for what promises to be a lively and a thought-provoking session. So first of all, I must start with the confession. So I used AI to help me write this welcome. So yes, ChatGPT and I had a little brainstorming session last night. So I figured if we are here to talk about AI, it might as well have a hand or a circuit in at least the introduction. So, but in all seriousness, the rise of AI is reshaping the research world faster than we can say machine learning algorithm. Whether it's crunching massive data sets or spotting patterns that's invisible to human eye, or helping us draft better introductions, like me, AI is no longer just a futuristic concept. It's right here in our labs, in our offices, and also in our classrooms. So today we'll explore not only the incredible potential that AI brings to our fields, but particularly in food and nutrition and tourism research, but also the very real ethical dilemmas it also introduces. From algorithm bias to data privacy to the tricky question of authorship, the conversation around AI is as complex as it is exciting. So grab your virtual coffee and open your digital notepads and get ready for a deep dive into the power, promise, and pitfalls of AI in research. We are delighted that you are here with us today. So let's get started with our first speaker. So our first speaker is Prof. Elizabeth Archer, and her topic today is Look What AI Let Me Do, Beyond the Fear. So Professor Elizabeth Archer is the Director of Institutional Research at the University of the Western Cape, where her strategic institutional research work provides crucial insights to the rector and the executive members. She's specializing in student success in higher education. She has authored numerous research papers, articles, and book chapters, and has presented at various conferences worldwide. Prof. Archer has held prominent editorial roles in esteemed academic journals and is currently the chief editor for the book Transforming Higher Education Through Artificial Intelligence, Innovations and Insights from the Global South. She advocates for integrating technology in education and supervises numerous master and doctoral students in that field. We are very excited for your talk, Liz, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Let's see if I can share here. I didn't want to do my sound just now. Well, I'm afraid you won't be able to hear the sound in one of my videos, but I'm sure you will survive. There we go. All right. So thank you very much for that introduction, Bianca. I am in the very privileged position today that I don't have to do the not fun stuff. Usually I spend quite a bit of time talking about ethics in AI, about prejudice and bias and the geopolitics around that. Today, I just get to show you the nice things. I want to start off by just talking about how quickly technology is changing. You can see that technology is changing exponentially. You know, from the VHS machine to space mining and AI, has taken a very short time. And the human brain is just not made to deal with change so quickly. Physiologically, we cannot adapt that quickly. In fact, we even had issues adapting to the steam train. Some believed that the cows would explode because the train would be going past so quickly. So the human mind takes time to adapt to changes. Now, just to give you an idea of how quickly AI has changed, this is just AI, ChatGPT specifically, reached 1 million users in 5 days since its release to the public. And it reached 100 million users in 2 months. Just to sort of contextualize that, Netflix took 2 years to reach the same amount of users. Even YouTube took 1.5 years. Okay, Instagram Threads only took 2 days. Unfortunately, I'm too old to know what that is, so it just doesn't count. Another way for me to show you how quickly things have changed, because we sort of think of AI as sort of being stagnant, unless you're really keeping up with the research. So one of the things we can look at is how the graphics have changed. So about 24 months ago, this is now from Ethan Mollick's blog, which I suggest you do subscribe to. If you ask the AI to give you an image of an otter flying and using the Wi-Fi, these are the images you would have gotten. 11 months later, this is what you would have gotten with the same prompt. A little bit of an improvement, I would say. And these days, and unfortunately you won't be able to hear the sound, we have videos. So if you had sound here, you would have heard how the skateboard jumps up, grinds on the rail, and moves through the skate park. Now, all of this was again just done by a text prompt. And for you who haven't tried it, OpenAI, the guys who created ChatGPT, have just opened up a tool called Sora, so that's for free, where you can make as many 5-minute clips as you wish. So please do go ahead and go and play around with that a bit. You don't need a subscription. But we've now reached a point where we can say to the AI, please create an image for me on how to build a good board game without any other input, and it will give you an infographic. Of course, that would be even better if you put in what sort of information you want in there. There's also been the trend where people created themselves as, what do you call them, action figures with attachments or with, with different tools that they do have. So this is that same otter now as a action figure. And here I said, I want that otter in front of a volcano with a infographic showing how to build the board game. In fact, I just loaded both of those things, and I want it to be as a metal plate. So it has become extremely easy to generate graphics, which means these, of course, are without copyright, except if you impose copyright yourself, because you've generated them yourselves. Okay, let me try and make it a little easier to understand. Let's say I was working in advertising and I had to create a poster advertising a new energy drink. So of course you storyboard it. So I draw my man holding the energy drink and I want a car and lightning shooting everywhere. And I put this into a large language model and this is what I get out. So as you can see, it is mind-boggling what it can do. And we will be losing some jobs, but I'm not going to speak about that doom and gloom and the fact that we'll actually be getting more jobs as a result of it. I'm just going to speak about the things that it allows us to do. Now, when I talk about the research, it can sound laissez-faire or that I don't care when I say, It doesn't matter whether or not you like AI. It doesn't matter whether or not you want to keep it out of your classroom or your research. It is actually just a fact. The AI is already there, and most of the time you can't even identify it. Your students are using it. You're using it for introductions, for webinars. It is something that is sort of infused into our entire society. Okay, so the first option, keeping the AI, is out. And I may argue that keeping the AI is against the graduateness of our students because they won't be able to work in the world of work. The second thing is we only have so much energy, right? And you have to make a choice. Are you going to spend that energy on trying to catch your students out for using AI? Or are you going to use the AI to teach and to produce better research? So let me show you some of the options here. And this is the only one where I'm going to speak a little bit about this. When we think about students coming into university, we all have certain set ideas, certain things we suffered through when we did our PhDs or we wrote journal articles or whatever it may be. And we had very set ideas about plagiarism. But in the age of AI, like Sarah Elaine Eaton says, we need to move to what's called post-plagiarism, where we accept that human AI writing is the norm. In fact, writing with one without the other will lead to disastrous results or poorer results. The idea with the AI is to improve the human creativity. So instead of my having to go to the library to get sources and copy them with a copier machine like I had to in my day, I can now very quickly through the AI get the sources, scan through them, find what I need, and get on to being creative. Your language barriers are going to disappear. It already speaks about 99 different languages, AI naturally. We now have tools in South Africa that speaks all 11 official languages, unfortunately not sign language yet. This is the important part, is while you can give some control to the AI, you're still responsible. So if the AI makes a mistake, you're responsible for it. So you need to be very careful in what you use. Attribution remains important. So like our introduction today, the statement that the AI was used to help with it. So this old idea of plagiarism just doesn't apply anymore. Okay, so I'm going to show you some things you can do with good old large language models. And you can use Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini Advanced, or Grok. I like ChatGPT. Which one's the best? It depends on the day of the week. The competition's so fierce, you just pick the one that you like. Okay, so here's some examples what you can do for your research. You can say, here's a paper, help me write an abstract. You can put in your, you can say, help me with the structure for this. This is my argument in this article. Of course, it's great at editing. You can also ask it to critique anything that you've written. And a nice one that we can do with the AI, which hasn't previously been easy, is there any group of literature that I've missed that I should have covered in this section? And of course, it's very useful for writing editorials. By the time you're writing an editorial for a book or for a special edition, you've read the article 17 times. And if you're anything like me, you just can't do it anymore. So you can actually upload the articles and ask it to help you with the editorial. Again, you're not going to use it as is. You might make some changes. And yeah, I just have to address one thing that people get confused about. People believe that if they've used something in AI or they've put it into an AI detection tool, it's more likely to be detected as AI than before. This is true of plagiarism to some extent, but not in terms of AI. When they're doing AI detection, they are purely looking at patterns of language use. It is very inaccurate. If you use multiple tools, you can have anything from 8% AI to 40% with the same piece of material. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's say I am writing a report. And this is one of the graphs that I have. There's no explanation of anything that's in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this straight into my ChatGPT because I'm way too lazy to do this myself. So I'm literally just pasting that image in there. And I'm not even going to say anything to it. I can to make it more accurate, but let's just click the button here and see what it does. Shucks, I've now put this on Pro. Let me just put this on 4.0. It's faster. So immediately picked up what the acronyms are for. It's given me the trends, the observations, possible implications. Now, I don't know about you guys, if you ever have to write a report about different tables and things. Most of the time, it's not brain surgery, but something like this can very easily help you. You can check the numbers. It doesn't make transposition errors. Earlier ones did. But it's a lot easier to actually write your paragraph, and you could tell it to write in a paragraph for you. So there it's taking some of the work away from you, but of course you've got to check these things, right? And of course you know what your context is like and what's important for your university or organization. So here's just an example of that. We are asked for trends, and I also asked for visualizations. And here's the visualizations it created on its own. If you come to more complex analysis, like principal component analysis or any other analysis, you can actually, again, paste the table in. I don't know about you guys, but oftentimes I get confused by all the information, especially if they have to pick a specific model and interpret it. And by the way, I'm doing this real time, guys. So now it said these are the models that are there. 4 models were created. These are different statistics. These are the ones that fitted the best. According to it, this is the best model. And there's an interpretation guide. I can go further and say, tell me a bit more about it. If you look at factor analysis and principal component analysis, so you work with it a lot, you know that it's actually more art than science in some cases. So this is a very useful tool, especially if a student wants to start learning how to use these things. I'm now, of course, just doing the most basic of basic. I don't even put a prompt in, just the image. Of course, if I ask it specific things, it will give me better explanations. Here's another example of something that I did. I used an article that I wanted to publish. I said, give me some, and this is again in ChatGPT, give me some keywords. And then I uploaded the list of articles that is recognized by DET, including the ISSI, IBSS, Norwegian journals, etc. And I said, look at these journals, look at the scope of focus, and see which journals would be appropriate for me. And give me hyperlinks. So none of these are made up. I can actually click the hyperlinks, go to that journal, and I'll find the same scope and focus, making it much easier for me than working off an Excel sheet that only has the name on it to decide which article to use. Okay, so what I've shown you up to here is just what you can do with general LLMs, from Grok to Llama to ChatGPT, and at the moment, the most advanced for research, by the way, would be Gemini Advanced. That will probably only be till the end of the week, the way things change. So let me show you some specific tools, and I'm focusing on tools that are free. And I'm going to start with the most basic one. Finding literature can be a real pain. So one of the ways to find literature is called paperdigest.org. And this is in real time. Here I was asking about dental care in poorer communities in South Africa. I click, I'm not even logged in. It gives me work relating to that. And if I scroll down, it says, give me 10 seconds to summarize what these things say. And there's your summary. Oh, my apologies. Then it gives you a summary of those works. It's not going to be brilliant. There's no way you can just copy and paste that over. There might be some of the documents that you don't want to use, or it's too old, or whatever the case is. But this is the most basic of them. It's called paperdigest.org. This we can then take to a whole new level with things like lit maps, or I prefer Research Rabbit. And this is how it works. Either you can add a paper that you like or that you're working from, or you can go and search for something. As you can see, I did a presentation for dentistry. What it then does is it immediately, this is all real time, identifies articles that might fit the bill, and you can then select the ones that you think are appropriate. You can take them out again later on if you want. But what it does is it sort of uses it as a seed to find other works that are similar or written earlier or later. And it will give you a graph of where these articles lie. If you hover over it, you can actually access that paper. There you can see there's the PDF download. Of course, this changed depending on the institution, what access you have and what's open. But this is a nice one. I'm asked it to just look at the authors in the field. And here you can see the biggest part of the authors working together and referencing each other. I wouldn't pay too much attention to referencing where there's only two authors referencing each other. But you can easily see the landscape of this environment. This is arguably the best tool at the moment for research and artificial intelligence. It's called SciSpace. It's also a little scary in terms of how much it can do. But as good as it is, I could never write an article with just this. So this is what it's like. What you can do is you can chat to any document you upload. You can ask it to do a literature review. You can use the AI writer, which is like Jenny AI, where it writes based on your previous sentence. People do get very afraid of this functionality, but the reality is its ability to be critical is not nearly as good as that of a human. Then finding topics and gaps, paraphrases, you can extract data from an article. So instead of having to type these things out of an article, and then it has an AI detector. So here again, you can look at Turnitin, copy leaks. Here's another one. Grammarly's got another one. And you can even make a video out of your PDF. This is one of the places where I asked it to look for specific sources. You'll see it actually has the sources over here, and it's got little columns for each of these sources. And I can add columns or take them back, which is, of course, amazing for a structured literature review or a meta-analysis. And here I've asked it for the top 5 papers, and it gives me an idea what's in the top 5 papers. I can literally just keep scrolling to get more and more papers. I'm not going to go into more depth with that one. I don't have enough time. But let me speak about another one, which is called Napkin. And here I've asked Napkin, I've actually asked it to write something in AI for me. I can put this in myself, but I can now click next to this, and again, it's free, and generate a visual on this paragraph. Again, this is real time, and I can pick what I want it to look like. None of this is cheating. The work is there. This is helping you with the presentation, making it easier to engage with. And here's another tool, and this one I think you should have your students using as well. It's completely free. It's called Notebook LM. And yeah, I'm creating a new notebook. And I can look Google Docs and slides and websites and copied text, even up to 50 different documents. I don't know much about food and nutrition, So I went and uploaded 6 journal articles over here, drag and drop, right? The first thing it will then do is it will just give me a summary of what's in there. Then I can ask it a question. It will give me a bunch of information and the numbers reference back to the journal articles. All right, if I want to take this a step further, I can create a mind map. Let me go and do this live for you. Right, so I can create a mind map of everything that I've loaded. Here's stuff about the multidimensional child growth index. And you can download this. For instance, many of the journals now ask if you have a graphic that summarizes your article or something like that, then you would only load your article. All right. And then, of course, you can also create a podcast. Oh, I forget you guys can't use sound, but it actually creates a podcast out of the information. If it's for studying, they can create study guides, briefing documents, timelines if there are dates, FAQs, so you can learn the material. Absolutely brilliant tool to make sense of a lot of different resources at the same time. There we go. So, to pay or not to pay? I started paying for ChatGPT 2 years ago. It's $20 a month. I tried it as a month-by-month basis, and I haven't stopped since because it is so good. But it's got a lot of free functions and DeepSeek as well. Grammarly is quite expensive, and so is SciSpace. Just a heads up, if you want to, you can use these things for free as well. It's just more functionalities when you do purchase it. Ask ChatGPT for discount codes before you go and subscribe. I did that with SciSpace, and I got a 20% discount, for instance. And there's generous free limits on most of the tools. And if needs be, you can create multiple Gmail accounts. But I didn't tell you that. So use the AI to find your literature. All right. Please check for hallucinations. There's been many cases where lawyers have quoted cases that don't exist. You have to go and check all of the literature. If it's real, go through it. Can be great for creating outlines. It's brilliant for editing. It can help you with your writing and your grammar. And it's very good at seeing gaps, be it in your literature or in your writing. But you give the conceptual contribution. One of the most important things that you have to note, I don't know if in your business you write reports, but oftentimes you have to write the same report for different departments. And that takes a lot of time. So you can actually write a report once or have materials once and put it in the format for finance and the next one for HR using the same materials. But the same also goes for what you do academically. If you've got a PowerPoint presentation, use that as a start with interacting with a large language model. Your proposals, your ethical forms, your clearance forms. So don't start from nowhere. You've done a lot of work already. In the past, we had to sort of basically start from scratch. Now, this is just a bit of a shortcut to get to your own arguments and presenting it well. So that's been quite a lot. I'm happy to take any questions if I haven't taken up too much time.
Thank you so much, Liz. Yeah, it was so inspiring as the first time I heard you speak. So thank you for sharing all the insights. I think, yeah, it can be scary for some people. And I see the Q&A box have just been activated again. So I'm not sure who can type very fast, but you're welcome to type some questions in for Prof. Archer, so that we can answer some of them. While some of you are maybe thinking, I have just 2 questions I would like to ask. The first one is if you can maybe just comment on data privacy. So If you would, for instance, upload a student's data for his master's on ChatGPT and ask for, interpretation and stats and what implications does that have? Who can access that data, or even an unpublished article that you upload there for, a bunch of other things? If you can maybe just comment on that, please.
Okay. The first problem we have with this is the way we think about it. A large language model doesn't save an article like a copyright tool, copyright detection tool. Large language models are based on how likely it is that what the next word will be. All right. So if your first word is bat, the next one is it a baseball bat, or is it a bat that can fly? This is very, very basic, but it works. Many people say it doesn't understand, although there's some argument about that now. They don't understand why it can think in ways that it's not supposed to. So as a whole, your material, if you load it up there, it's not going to make a big difference. If you ask it to write Alice in Wonderland for you, it will almost do it word for word because it's been uploaded so many times. All right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you've got a pro account, you can, even if it's a free account, you can put off the memory. So it doesn't take that information in. Then the other side of things is you shouldn't put anything in there that's identifiable. Okay, so I've got principal component analysis. It doesn't even know what's my principles. So there's no real risk there. It's about what you're uploading, and you just have to be wise about what you're uploading. But the idea that it's going to increase the your AI usage statistics is just not founded. All it's looking for when it's doing AI detection is language patterns. Okay, so for instance, there's some that actually shows you words that is likely to pick up on. One that it often picks up is in conclusion, comma. So yes.
Yeah, thanks.
No
Thank you for
problem.
that. Yes, I see there's a bunch of questions. Would you like me to maybe read them out, or do you want to choose some questions that you are comfortable answering?
Okay, I've got a few of them over here. I saw one about hallucinations. Now, hallucinations is where the AI wants to answer your question, but it can't really, so it makes something up. Now, in the beginning, if you were looking for articles in plain old ChatGPT or Grok or Llama or whatever you're using, it would really make these things up. If you go and click on it, it doesn't exist. You can search for it, it doesn't exist. Now it's down to, now if you're using advanced Gemini, it's almost at 0% in terms of hallucinations. The rest is 30% and lower. This is now from this week's updates. So there's less and less hallucinations. But I don't know if you guys can think back. When I was doing my master's, I was taught to critically investigate the sources that I'm using. Is this useful? Is this appropriate? Have these people gone off the deep side in terms of vaccinations, etc., etc.? This is exactly the same thing with hallucinations. Our students and we must check all of the sources. Because remember, you are still responsible, even though it can do some of the work for you. So this is part of what we do and when we write and doing research shifts. That is useful.
Yeah, I see also there's a trend, some people, a bunch of people have asked similar questions around, when you submit to a journal. Have you had any challenges when you submit a journal and you disclose that you've used AI? And I see there was another one here, on if I insert my research into AI to check for the golden thread throughout, do I still have the rights to it? Can it be unethical? How do you report that? How do you cite that to your journal? And do they actually then read your work with more caution, or what? Have you had experience with that?
Actually, journals at first said, no, you can't use AI. That was the first knee-jerk reaction. Then it said you can use it for X, Y, and Z. And then they said you must just acknowledge it. Many of the journals don't ask, sorry, you guys still there? Bianca's frozen for me. Well, Bianca can't tell me. There we go. So many journals would actually say, no, you can't use it. Now it shifted to a point where, when you submit those terrible submission systems, you'd get to a point where there's acknowledgement of AI and they say, here's different things you could have used the AI for, tick the boxes, and then it actually writes the paragraph for you. So no, they don't look at it differently. Maybe some people might, but it is required that you state it. I mean, using something like Grammarly is using AI. If you're using Atlas TI, there's AI embedded in it, the new versions. So admit to using it, but remember, AI cannot be an author. So you should see it. If you think about the AI, make it a person. All right. This is a colleague you're speaking to that's not going to have their name on the article, but you want insights. And that's what you should ask the AI to help with.
Yeah, I kind of like that response. I think it's very useful in terms of all of us that's working remotely to have that colleague that you can talk to. Yeah, it's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, I think we have time for two more questions. So I saw one that was interesting for me here. Where is it now? So how do you think the role of professors and academics will change, thinking of higher education with AI in the next decade? Do you think we will become absolute or not?
No, I don't believe so, but I think our jobs will change. I can give you, this is not about teaching and not research, but I can give you an example. I have a colleague who works in pharmaceutical studies. He designed what he called the GPT tutor, which then helps to tutor his students. It actually he's put in some of the industry tools as well. It's in the learning management system. And what it does is it reaches that student at their level and their questions. And it answers it from whatever time of the day it is. They can even ask it in a different language. And what he's found, this is now with his third years, is they actually performed 16% better, even though his question paper was 8% more difficult. He had to check both. He didn't expect it. The understanding is much better, as is the self-assuredness. But they had to learn how to use the AI in a way that helps them. So our jobs become, there's two reasons we educate. The one is critical thinking. That doesn't change with the advent of AI. AI is not particularly bright. You need to really hold its hand. It's vanilla. And the second part is you've got to get them ready for work. And I was reading this morning, no, yesterday, it was the study from, I think it was Cambridge. It's pre-publication at the moment. But what's happening is that people who use AI in the working environment are getting paid up to 340% more than people that aren't. So working with AI is a precondition for work in many cases these days. So if we look at our second role, which is, so we've got the academic role and critical thinking, but our second role is getting our students ready for the workplace. If we want to get them ready for workplace, they have to be using AI. I hope that is helpful.
Yeah, I think it's very helpful. Yeah, I think that's all we have time for now. You are more than welcome if you have 5 minutes or so to answer some of the other questions on the Q&A, but I know you also have other responsibilities, so you are not going to stay till the end. So I would just like to take this time to really thank you for sharing your insights to us. And yeah, it completely changed my life the first time I heard you present. And yeah, the thing for me was not to be afraid of AI. And I think that's where most people are afraid to just dip their toes in the water. And I think there's it's really eye-opening. So thank you so much, Liz, and I hope that you have a wonderful day further, and you're welcome to stay on for so long you can and answer some questions, but otherwise, thank you.
Just one thing, if you do nothing else after this presentation, have a look at Notebook LM. Thank you very much.
I'm sure everyone will do that. Thank you. So I'm gonna present our next speaker. You are more than welcome to keep on posting questions. We will answer them as we go along. Thank you for posting questions as well. So our second speaker is Prof. Dube, and he will talk about trends and development in AI usage in academia, potential opportunities, and pitfalls. So Prof. Dube is a professor at the Vaal University of Technology and is a C2 rate NRF rated researcher who is one of the top leading tourism and researchers locally and internationally with true marks of academic leadership. An award-winning researcher and a scholar who is also a visiting research professor at Emirates Aviation University in Dubai, with research interest in tourism, climate change, sustainability, and curriculum. So we look forward to your talk, Prof. Dube, and yeah, you're welcome to take over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bianca, and thank you to the audience, and thanks to Prof for that opening presentation, which is in a lot of ways exciting. So I'm going to look at the trends and developments in AI usage in academia, so that we look at some of the potential opportunities and pitfalls. And I think Prof, the preceding speaker, has done a fair amount of work in terms of making sure that that task is well executed. But given that we could have, I think, students and also some academics with no background of what artificial intelligence is, I think the first thing is always to start by defining what artificial intelligence is. So in many respects, artificial intelligence is machine's ability to perform some cognitive functions that we usually associate with human minds. We have come to know artificial intelligence through generative artificial intelligence, which is called AI, which describe algorithms such as ChatGPT and DeepSeek that can be used to create new content, including audio, code, images, text simulations, and videos. And I think in many respects, the way that these prompts work and also the implications of the kind of prompt that you want to generate, you have got different implications from a research and also an academic perspective. Artificial intelligence, AGI, is also a theoretical AI system with capabilities that rival those of a human being, which is the future of artificial intelligence. And many researchers that believe that we're still decades, if not centuries, away from achieving the artificial general intelligence per se. But perhaps if we reflect back and we go back into history, not so long ago, the buzzword has been on machine learning, which is a form of artificial intelligence that is able to learn without explicit programming by a human. And some of the apps that we have come to use in our research space, most of them has been driven by machine learning in a lot of ways. And in many respects, humans have got a love and a hate relationship with artificial intelligence, given that I think some of the threats with regards to jobs and also the suspicion that at some point artificial intelligence is also going to rival human beings. So in many respects, the artificial intelligence is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. With AI being the broad field of developing machines that can replicate human behaviors, including tasks related to perceiving, reason, learning, and also problem solving. And we say that we have got three branches, and the first branch being machine learning, which was a breakthrough in achieving artificial intelligence. So in many respects, machine learning becomes the grandfather of generative AI. So machine learning is a logarithm that detects patterns in large data sets and learn to make predictions by processing data rather than by receiving explicit programming instructions, as we know generative AI to be. And then we have got deep learning. I think there was also an era where there was a lot of talk about deep learning, which is an advanced branch of machine learning. So deep learning uses neural networks inspired by the ways in which neurons in the human brain work to ingest data and process it through multiple interactions that learn to increasingly complex features of the data and make increasingly sophisticated prediction. We have got generative AI, which is, I think, the bone of contention today, which also fall under the large umbrella of artificial intelligence, which is an advanced branch of deep learning. Generative AI is a branch of deep learning that uses exceptional large neural network called large language models with hundreds of billions of neurons that can learn especially abstract patterns. Language models applied to interpret and create text, videos, images, and data, which is the generative aspect, I think, that we're talking about. And you can look at the kind of differences between those branches of artificial intelligence. So we have got image recognition, code generation, semantic rule-based systems, autonomous robotics, workflow automation, heuristic search, and text processing. And we've got machine learning, where you're able to partitioning methods, feature extraction, deductive reasoning, classification. Then we have got neural networks, which actually mimics also almost like the human brain. Then we have got our deep learning, which is also a bit different in terms of the capabilities that it is able to do, which is memory networks. So the whole issue of artificial intelligence did not start yesterday or did not start in 2022, 2023, or 2019, just before or after COVID-19. But we have had the evolution of artificial intelligence as far back as just after the World War. And the grandfather of artificial intelligence is a guy called Turing, who was a computer scientist, who proposes a test for machine intelligence. If a machine can trick humans into thinking that then it has intelligence. So we see the birth of artificial intelligence around 1950. And between 1966 and 1997, it's normally we called the AI winter, as there hasn't been a lot of activity in terms of the development of artificial intelligence. But we have seen quite a number of evolutionary work, and most of us who rely on Mac or iPhones, we know about Siri, which is also an AI driven. So to date, on the market, we have got quite thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of tools that can actually be used by researchers in terms of conducting research work and also academic work. And most of this work, these tools, some of them are used for literature search, literature mapping, which should actually assist a lot of our students and also researchers in terms of doing their work as a tool. Take note, I'm indicating that we should use these as tools, but not as a replacement for human human capacity in terms of research work. Then we also have tools that can assist us to read a bit faster with a bit more efficiency, which is for note taking, and we have been given, I think, a background in terms of some of these. Then we have got data analysis tools. We have got quite a range of those. with some that are scientifically known to actually be working, such as Julius AI, and I think a lot of us here are actually familiar with ARA, which is also driven on machine learning. Then we have got tools that can actually be used in terms of figure and images, editing, and also proofreading tools. Then we also have tools that are used as reference managers. And these tools offer quite a number of advantages as they assist us. So in a lot of ways, if you look at Zotero, if you look at Mendeley, most of us will know that we were using this before the advent even of ChatGPT as we know it, because these are tools that were developed and driven by machine learning, and they are able to assist us in terms of ensuring that we produce, we have efficiency. So there was a research that was conducted amongst researchers. So I'm going to look at what are some of the trends and the developments that how is artificial intelligence actually being used in research by researchers. So most of our researchers are using artificial intelligence in terms of manuscript preparation, or this could be thesis if you are a postgraduate student. So for writing assistance, particularly in terms of copy editing the work that you have done, the tools that are available also can assist us in terms of detecting errors and sometimes bias in terms of our own writing. And we spoke about how tools such as Grammarly can actually be used in terms of improving our language and also readability. And we know we use also Turnitin and ZeroGPT to check the plagiarism levels. And we have got also tools that we can use. It's acceptable to use these tools in terms of populating citations, be it Mendeley and also Zotero. And we also sometimes use these tools in terms of format article to comply with submission guidelines. Ensure. So you can see in terms of percentages, what is the most acceptable and the most popular ways of how artificial intelligence tools are actually being used. We also use these AI tools in terms of assisting us in terms of dealing with large data sets. If you look at the use of Atlas TI, which you have got a manual component, and now also you have an artificial intelligence component. So all these actually gives us an indication of what is generally acceptable in terms of the usage of these tools as aid in terms of assisting us in doing research. So research accessibility and sharing, creating plain language summaries. So some people actually rely on these tools. So if you are doing that, so what are some of the current trends? What researchers want from publishers, and what are the bone of contention? So this was a study that included about 4,946 researchers worldwide. What researchers want from publishers with regard to AI? There's need for clarity in terms of how they can actually use AI in a responsible but also in an ethical way. Help researchers to avoid potential pitfalls, errors, and biases. Share best practices and tips on using artificial intelligence. And I think part of this conversation is try and identify some of these things. Provide guidance of how researchers can use AI responsibly, which is at the core. And I think as researchers, as students, we need to have that at the back of our mind. That is the ability, capacity to use these AI tools in a responsible, ethical way, but also respecting, I think, some of the pitfalls that we're going to discuss about later on. Share recommendation on what AI tools can use prioritized tools to detect or misuse of artificial intelligence, particularly by students. And other uses include assistance with translation, proofreading, and editing scholarly papers for publication. And I think this has been particularly covered. So we have got with in this particular research, there was an analysis also to look at what is it that human beings do better, and what does AI are able to do better. So human beings believe that they are able to actually identify gaps in the literature better, and also to use the tool to predict trends and future milestones in the field and identify gaps in the literature. While if you look on the other hand, you have got AI agent to monitor, summarize key publications in your field, fraud, plagiarism detection. So AI actually can do that better. Reviewing large amounts of published and preprint studies. So artificial intelligence is actually able to execute that particular functionality better than human beings. So with regards to this is what we expect the future to look like. In less than 2 years, we expect that there's going to be an increase in the usage of artificial intelligence in terms of writing up documentation, and you can see how that movement is also going to sort of move, identify potential collaborators. We can actually see the deployment of artificial intelligence tools, tools to optimize allocations of shared resources. Then we can also look at automated content generating multimedia, accepted audio article generator, so where audios and podcasts can actually be produced on work that has actually been published. So we have seen quite a number of tools, and if you look at what SciSpace is also able to do, if you upload your article, SciSpace is actually able to produce a podcast. So that's what the future is looking like. So with regards to peer review, we see that there is a lot of in terms of standardizing the format of submission, and that is likely to grow by about 34% in the next 3 years and by 12% in the subsequent years. Peer review recommendation tool based on article comparison, 51%, likely to grow by 35% in the foreseeable future. Increase the speed and ease of peer review, 50%. So you can see the speed at which, so what do researchers in various parts of the world say about using AI in terms of to perform performance? We say that there's that love-hate relationship. AI is able to process more and faster information compared to human beings, which I think tallies with what we're saying. It typically signifies enhanced efficiency and productivity. So the tool, if you look at how we use it in terms of reference management, and also to summarize it, also to read some of these articles, there are definitely positives that are there. There is a lot of expectation that in the next 2 years, if you compare it to where we are currently, there is a small percentage of people that have used or tried to use some of these tools. And in the next 2 years, I think this is one of the years, that growth there has to rise from 25% to 65%. Generating references and recommendations, 61%. Identify peer reviewers with relevant expertise, 57%. Identify gaps in literature, 52%. Tool to predict future trends or milestone in the field, 42%. Because precisely offloading is essential, but less work is to grow to about 56%. Assistance with writing funding applications, that is to grow by 54%. AI to grant monitor funding opportunities, 52%. So we can still see that there's a large gap in terms of usage by other stakeholders. just rising above 50%. However, what are some of the challenges that we have seen with regards to AI? So the principal understanding is that all artificial intelligence, they derive their capabilities through learning, and it is important for us as researchers and also as students to understand that large language models are trained on a particular data set. And some of that data set is data that is coming from already published material. So if you're going to ask ChatGPT to answer a particular question, it is going to answer that particular question depending on the data that it was trained on from various internet sources, and it could be from books, journals, and also newspapers. And also, it is important for us to understand that some of that data that is used to train these GPTs is not actually accurate. You can imagine that if the large language model uses particularly data that comes from, say, Twitter, there is a lot of bias and there's a lot of misinformation that goes on in that particular space. So it is important that we understand that when we use such platforms, there are those challenges. So there are general fears that some people are going to be displaced, and with fears that even some researchers can be replaced. I think there's been indications that no, at some point we are going to have a situation where researchers are replaced. And the artificial intelligence takes over those particular roles of collecting data. Maybe not to that extent, because ChatGPT is actually works based on training, and also that human beings and their functionality is totally different from those of machines. We also indicated that part of the data that is actually used, there are also issues around privacy violations with regards to some of the data that is actually used to train these particular models that we use. And also, we see that there are challenges with regards to cybersecurity as we continue and increase the usage of not only large language models, but also the internet. There are clear biases with regards to logarithm biases, and we also have challenges with deepfake and misinformation. I know we have been indicated that some of the so there's a lot of misinformation. As a book editor, as a journal editor for quite a number of journals, we actually can pick when a person actually used generative AI to produce their work, and sometimes we pick this through inaccuracies or just redundancy, because remember, this data in most of the times is largely general. So there's also lack of explainability and transparency, and over-reliance on AI can also be problematic, as it limits and inhibits deep thinking that is associated with human minds. And there are actually fears that some of the graduates that we are producing who are overly reliant on artificial intelligence are not able to work outside of the machines. So that is actually a risk. So there's that existential risk that AI is going to develop to a point where it actually poses an existential threat to humanity. There is a talk that at some point artificial intelligence can actually surpass human beings and start doing their own things unconfigured by human beings. I think by 15 minutes have lapsed. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Dube. I think you did an excellent job of just also laying the ground floor. I think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and we actually don't know the basics of where it stemmed from and so forth. So thank you for providing that. I'm just opening up some of the questions that were posted. So Louise asks, does it help for academic use if you prompt your AI model to only use peer-reviewed evidence? So that then does it actually do that and ignore social media, for instance? Yeah, is it something that we should be cognizant of?
Okay, so that's a brilliant comment. So like I indicated, we all there's no transparency currently with regards to now I'm sure if you're using ChatGPT, you've got no idea of what type of data was used to train those particular models. It's a bit different when you look at Scopus AI, for example. You know, so there's transparency. I know Web of Science, they've got also their AI tool, which I think I was one of the people that assisted them in terms of giving them feedback in terms of their performance, but I've not seen it being deployed. So if you're using such platforms such as Scopus AI, you know that it is populating that particular data set from Scopus indexed material or from a Web of Science material. But with other GPTs, you have got no idea where that particular data set actually reside in terms of what was used to train this particular large language models. So there are potential pitfalls. And the greatest fear is that if one is going to overly rely on that, and you are not a field expert in that particular area, you're likely to write something that is wrong and believe that it is the correct thing. So it takes someone who is experienced to actually know that this particular information that is being given is either too pedestrian or is also inaccurate. So you need to be a field expert to actually be able to check that.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent answer. Then we also have a question here from Suleka. So thank you, Prof. Dube, for your presentation. Question is there anywhere in research where Prof thinks that AI should really not be used?
Okay, so in no uncertain terms, GPTs should not be used to replace human beings. Tasks such as writing of the original manuscript, that should be left to you as a student. Because at the end of the day, we need to also to look at what are some of the graduate attributes that you need to have. We need you to have assumed certain graduate attributes. But if all that you did was to put your topic and say to AI, write for me a thesis and reference. I know there are quite a number of tools that are available on the market that claim they can do that, and I've used them to actually just verify whether the claim is accurate. In most instances, I have found them wanting as an expert in the kind of field that I work on. So GPTs should never be used to replace human beings, but they should be used in an ethical manner, in a responsible manner, with respect to the understanding that these are tools and they are not supposed to replace human beings.
Thank you. I agree with you 100%. And it also actually ties up to a question I wrote down. And it's something that I almost struggle with when I take on a new master's student or a PhD student, and you have that initial conversation about this is your topic, this is what I think we should go into, and so forth. And how do you approach a new master's student, for instance, that's going to go on this research journey? How do you train them to use AI in their studies? Do you sort of leave them to do their own work first and then introduce AI to improve it, or do you introduce it to them from the start to say, let's use it from the start, and this is how you use it ethically? Yeah, just maybe your opinion on how do you approach your students in terms of use of AI?
Okay. So I think this is a social science question, and it becomes a bit difficult in terms of it relies on, I think, beliefs and what we think is right and ethics. The principal thing I think is to make the student understand where that particular data set, particularly for AI, comes from. I've got students that I'm currently supervising. So with regards to the introduction of artificial intelligence, I've not been forthcoming in terms of saying use artificial intelligence, because I think I need my students to be grounded, to have depth in terms of what they are doing. But there are basic tools I think that students can also take, make use of. If you look at SciSpace, it can actually assist them in terms of their reading. But to me, it is not adequate for a student to read a summarized article, and also only focusing on the kind of information that they want to look at. Because at the end of the day, this particular student needs to know how to write. And if we just channel them and say, let's use artificial intelligence to sort of do some of these things, my fear is that we might end up not producing students who have got depth in terms of being able also to train other students, because I think that's where the focus is in terms of how do we safeguard. And that talks to us teaching our students to ethically use these particular the tools and use them in moderation, knowing that they are aid but not a replacement of what they are supposed to do. So that's a difficult question, but yeah, that's my view and that's my opinion. Because I think one of the criticisms that we have had, I think we had the doctoral review program, I think a couple of years ago, and already there is talk in society that most of our graduates lack depth. And as universities, it is our responsibility to ensure that we jealously guard, I think, that particular legacy, because we need a society to develop and to progress. But we can't do that if our training for our masters and doctoral students is a bit shallow.
Yeah, thank you so much for your response. I think it ties in with what you said in your presentation on, making them then reliant on, they can't think, how should this introduction now look like, because they are so reliant on just prompting. So thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. So yeah, thank you so much, Prof. Dube, for sharing your insights on this very interesting topic. And if there's any other questions that pops up, you are welcome to answer them in the Q&A section. And yeah, thank you so much for availing yourself to share.
Thank you so much. I see a hand. Is that Tiyiso Mahlaule? Is that a hand?
Yeah, I think we did encourage her to post a question. Yeah, so I think she did
Okay.
post a question in the Q&A. I see now. Yes. Okay, so we are approaching our final speaker. So I would like to introduce Dr. Kieran Oden. He will talk about applying AI in research with purpose and caution. Dr. Kieran is a public health nutritionist. He's a researcher and an educator with over a decade of experience working across Africa. His work brings nutrition, sustainable agriculture, and mental health with a focus on vulnerable populations together. He has lectured at the University of Ghana, University of Zambia, and UKZN, and has led research on the impact of agriculture diversification on child nutrition in rural Zambia. Dr. Aiden's research includes adolescent nutrition, agroecology, and the emerging field of nutritional psychiatry. Through his publications, policy work, and community outreach, he advocates for food systems that nourish both people and the planet. Welcome, Prof. Kieran. You're welcome to share your screen with us, and then it's over to you.
Thank you very much for the warm welcomes. Happy to be here. So, quite a few of the points that have already been discussed by the previous speakers. So this presentation will be a bit succinct, but I'll try to plug in some of the gaps as well. So, over the past 2 years, I've been conducting workshops on the use of AI in research and teaching, and I've actually covered quite a few of the tools that Prof. Archer mentioned. But in all my workshops, I always lead with this quote that AI will not replace researchers, but researchers who use AI ethically will outpace those who don't. Because I remember in the beginning, there was a lot of skepticism with regards to the use of AI and whether it should be adopted or not. But just to capture the essence of this webinar, I think any researcher that is not using some type of AI tool, whether it's as a note taker or a generative tool, will very much likely fall behind their peers who are using AI. But that being said, AI is a very extremely useful resource that we've seen from the past two presentations, but it needs to be used with intention, but most importantly, responsibility. So we've all seen and experienced the buzz around AI over the generative AI in particular over the past 2 years, especially in academia. So today, myself and the other speakers have given some insight into what exactly can it do for researchers, and also how do we avoid the ethical pitfalls. So that's the space that I plan to explore today. All right, so starting off with some honesty, we all know that academic research can be extremely overwhelming at times. We have massive reading loads, we have tight deadlines, lots of data to analyze and interpret. On top of that, especially those in universities, we have quite a significant teaching load as well to deal with. So AI can feel like a very tempting shortcut, but the question we really need to ask is, how do we use it responsibly? And also what examples do we set as well for the students that are also utilizing AI? So Prof. Archer did a very great job at describing some of the uses of generative AI. So I won't spend too much time. I'll just give an overview. So there's multitude of tools available, both free and subscription tools available that can be used to help the range of research-related tasks, from summarizing papers, suggesting structures and outlines for proposals and research articles, refining writing as well, and even helping to brainstorm ideas, topic ideas. So for example, accelerating literature review. So when you start a literature review, you can run initial questions to a range of different tools like Elicit, for example. Elicit is one of my favorite. It can help to find papers, to map out connections, and it can even highlight methods that can be used as well. So this gives a sense of the landscape of the tools that are available. Then in terms of summarizing text as well, you can utilize your generative AI tools like your ChatGPT, but in some cases where you have really large files and you only have a free subscription, you don't have the paid subscription, there are other tools available like Chat PDF, SciSpace, which Prof. Archer mentioned. These can help to summarize long articles or reports. So they can give you like summary points, especially when you're reviewing those large policy documents and nutrition guidelines or any other particular discipline. But also, what I'm going to mention in terms of the hallucination is very important that you still read the text, because it's very easy to just take a shortcut and decide, okay, I'm just going to utilize this summary, but then you realize that there was some hallucinations and some inaccuracies. So it's very important to still go back and check the text as well. And as Prof. Dubé mentioned, the use of reference managers. So this has been in use long before generative AI became popular. So they can help to reduce your extra work around the writing. So in terms of generating your references, help with your citations, formatting, even outlining sections as well. So they can cut down the amount of admin work surrounding writing as well. And then the most controversial area, in my opinion, when it comes to the use of AI, as the other speakers have mentioned as well, is in terms of improving and utilizing AI to generate academic writing. So I think anyone who has been exposed to AI writing over the past couple of years, you can see that the output itself can be quite repetitive, can be quite predictable. So, I mean, you just need to look on LinkedIn alone and you can see that almost every post, every comment sounds quite similar. There's a lot of use of similar phrasing. And that may not necessarily be a problem for social media, but when it comes to academic writing, it can pose a challenge. So we know writing itself is one of the most exhausting parts of research. So the temptation is very high to just copy and paste directly from the AI tool into your manuscript or into your proposal or whatever document. But I think it's very important to not lose the human voice. So you don't want a situation where all writing just sounds the same, sounds generic. So I think it's very important to pay attention to that. But people who I think can benefit the most from these AI tools are like your multilingual researchers, for example. So if English may not necessarily be your first language, it can help to improve the grammar. So, there's a range of different tools out there. One of my favorites is Quillbot. Quillbot can actually help to in terms of paraphrasing and restructuring writing. But another point I want to make is it's also important to not lose the context or the meaning of the text itself when utilizing some of these paraphrasing tools, because generative AI in particular doesn't really understand context in a lot of situations. So that is also something to pay attention to. So going back to the point that AI can be quite misleading. So in addition to hallucinating and providing false information, so AI is quite good at giving you authoritatively false information. So it can sound extremely confident and authoritative, but then you find out that when you dig deeper, you see that it's either incorrect or it's incomplete. So that is also very important to pay attention to. Remember, I had one instance where I asked ChatGPT to reformat some references for me from APA to Harvard style, and then it included a lot of false references that actually didn't exist. So everything, any type of output that AI generates needs to be double checked and triple checked, my opinion. So always important, you still read documents, you still check citations, don't just blindly trust AI. This is something that was also touched on in terms of the risk of over-reliance. So this is a particularly valid point when it comes to students' use of AI as well. So I remember back when I was teaching at I won't say the university, but I've had some students, I tasked them with conducting a focus group discussion. And then quite a few students, they submitted this generic ChatGPT output that included collecting weights and heights and calculating BMI, which had nothing to do with the assignment. So that just showed me that they didn't really understand what it is they were doing. They just gave me a copy and paste output. So I think that is also quite important as academics. The way we structure our assignments can also help to determine if students understand the concepts that they are applying or not. So depending on the discipline, the way how we craft and design assignments will look different, but usually it can take the shape of more practical applications or the promotion of more critical thinking. I think that's going to be very important going forward in the advent of AI because, I mean, students will utilize AI, so how we structure the assignments will become a lot more important. So for example, giving them tasks where they have to reflect on the design of whatever it is. So for example, for this focus group discussion, they could reflect on the process, how it has strengthened their understanding of qualitative research in general or on the particular topic. Also discussing the limitations of the tools that they use in this type of assignment, how we could potentially give them misleading information. Those are some of the ways that you can actually test their thinking on the particular topic. So just general over-reliance can actually weaken your academic skills, weaken academic rigor. So these are some points that it's important to stress. So another concern is bias, which has also been mentioned. So a lot of these AI tools, they have been trained on Western or the global North data sets from your more developed countries. So that means a lot of information from the global South. So your African countries, Caribbean, Latin America, Asia, a lot of information can actually be underrepresented or misrepresented. So that runs a very high risk of perpetuating stereotypes, perpetuating biases in the output. So especially when dealing with social science research, for example, or any type of qualitative research that goes beyond just facts and figures, this is where AI bias is more likely to become prevalent. So just for example, you have a student that's researching traditional healing practices in South Africa, for example, and they use an AI tool to generate interview questions. Then the tool could suggest questions that is based on a Western understanding or Western biomedical assumptions. So for example, it can ask a question like, how do you ensure your practices are evidence-based? And that's not really going to be relevant for the participants. So that's something a researcher would need to understand and would need to identify. So those types of biases can actually ignore context, right? Whether it's a spiritual or a cultural context of the local situation. So that is just an example of how AI can misrepresent or diminish local knowledge and reinforce bias. So I think it's very important as researchers for us to be aware of these blind spots. So this article here, this is on the question of authorship. So in the early days of ChatGPT, there was a large debate as to whether or not ChatGPT should be listed as an author. And it was overwhelmingly said by many researchers and authors and editors that it should not be. So I think this was one of the first articles where ChatGPT was listed as an author. And after the debate, it was decided that it should be removed. And now in some journals, they require you to disclose whether ChatGPT or whether generative AI was used as a tool to develop the manuscript, but it cannot be listed as an author. So most journals allow you to utilize generative AI to improve the readability of the manuscript, whether it would be to rewrite sentences or to generate outlines. But in terms of disclosing whether or not AI was used, some journals are different to others. I know Elsevier requires you to disclose whether AI was used. So similarly, how you have your author contribution statement, your conflict of interest statement, authors now have to disclose in the manuscript whether they use AI or any AI-assisted technology. And then that will be appear as a statement as well. So it could look something like AI was used to restructure a particular paragraph or restructure a particular section. So I think it will vary depending on how the tool itself was utilized. But I know for Elsevier, for certain, they require authors to disclose whether AI was used. So the whole idea is to avoid the ethical dilemma by being transparent. So transparency is what supports the trust between the authors and the readers, whether the readers are the general audience or the reviewers or the editors. So in particular, they require you to be transparent with regards to that. So that transparency policy, it only applies to the writing process itself, and not necessarily if you utilize AI for data analysis, for example, or interpretation of the data. You may not necessarily need to disclose that. However, if you utilize it for any particular quantitative data analysis or even qualitative as well, you may want to list it in the methodology section of the paper as opposed to in the disclosure statement. So essentially, like all the speakers before me have mentioned, that you should never really attribute authorship to a tool, because authorship implies responsibility. And at the end of the day, the author, the human author, has to be responsible. You can't blame AI for any inaccuracies in the document, in the manuscript, any lack of originality in the topic itself. You can't say, well, it's AI's fault. You have to take responsibility as the user of the tool. So another point I wanted to make with regards to this, the use of AI in academic journals, is the issue of reviewing manuscripts. A lot of us as academics, we get invited to review a manuscript, but it's important to know that that manuscript must be treated as a confidential document. So I know Elsevier in particular, they do not allow generative AI tools to be used in journal reviewing. So you're not allowed to upload it onto a generative AI tool. This can actually violate the author's confidentiality rights, especially if there are any identifying information, any personal information of the author, like their names, their email address, their affiliation, right? So it's very important to note that you must stick to the traditional way of reviewing a manuscript in terms of reading it and generating your own report, as opposed to just uploading it onto ChatGPT or any other large language model. So that's the point I wanted to make with regards to reviews. So essentially, what does responsible AI use look like? Can utilize AI to assist, but not necessarily to replace our thinking. So we can utilize our subject knowledge, our training to use AI to help us to work faster, but we still have to apply that knowledge and use AI in a responsible manner. Always verify the outputs that AI gives you, because despite its advancement, it's still likely to make mistakes, and you don't want to have put that out into the research world. Also disclose AI use if required by the particular journal, and then pay attention to biases in outputs and in sources as well that are utilized. So just wanted to point out that AI actually reflects back what it's being trained on, as Prof. Dubé mentioned, in terms of the data sets that it's being trained on. So doesn't always necessarily understand context or values. So that's where we come in as human researchers. We have to apply that to the output itself. So the ethics, the judgments, the insights, that still belongs very much to us as researchers. So just to wrap up, AI in research, as we see, is extremely useful, can help us to work smarter, but it's still very important that we use it with care, not just for convenience. So AI can do a lot of things. Future tools will allow us to do a lot more, but research itself depends on how we choose to use it. So I will end with that. Thank you very much. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email. Forward to hearing questions.
Thank you so much, Kieran, for sharing your insights. And yeah, there's a bunch of your quotes that I actually wrote down that's very valuable and makes you think. And I think it will be very useful also to share that with students. So I'm going to open up some of the questions that were posed. So there's a question here on, I submitted a document on Turnitin where I used Quillbot. For paraphrasing, the report was returned with highlights on Quillbot. Can this increase the plagiarism index? So yeah, I think the question is around using AI as a grammar tool, and then if checked for AI use, then obviously it would be flagged. And what would your suggestion be we do with that?
Yeah, I think Prof. Archer mentioned with regards to the utilizing of AI for AI detection in terms of writing and how it recognizes certain writing styles and phrasing in terms of its identification. So I don't think it's really a good idea to rely on that because it can be quite inaccurate. So I think any type of well-written article is likely to be flagged as AI writing in terms of the sentence structuring, because that's what it tends to recognize. And then at the end of the day, AI is also trained on existing writing as well. So it will essentially just mirror a lot of existing phrasing and sentence structuring. So utilizing that, I would definitely not recommend it, especially in academia where you have to judge, right, people's um, writing and output, and you have to grade it. I wouldn't necessarily penalize for that based on these AI detection tools, because they can vary as well. They can vary, as Prof. Archer mentioned as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think also in the higher education sector, we are, developing policies around use of AI, and I think it's still very new. So I think we are all learning as we go along, which is sometimes frustrating because we want to know what to do with these tools and if we can use them or not. Then there's another question here. If you suspect a reviewer used AI to review based on your abstract only, what would be the course of action? Journals are not clear on this. I don't know if you have a response maybe to that.
I think the best thing to do would be to contact the editor, the journal, and ask them to contact the reviewer, ask them if they used AI, and maybe suggest an alternative reviewer. May delay the process a bit, but if you think you were unfairly reviewed based on a generic AI tool and you were just given like a random review that you feel like because you are allowed to query the reviewer comments as well. So you can include that you suspect that it was AI generated and it's not relevant for the context of the manuscript. And yeah, just explain that to the editor, and yeah, they should be able to take some action from there.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very useful advice. Then there's also a question here on, so how do you check AI with students? I guess she's a lecturer. When they submit a document that indicates no AI, so you've maybe used Turnitin and they indicate that they have not used AI, but we all know when we see a document that's used AI. So what do you do then? Do you have experience from your own teachings maybe on how do you approach if you can see students are using AI, but you sort of can't prove it?
Yeah, I think especially if it's a student you've had for some time and you've seen their writing and you can identify, okay, this is not their typical writing style. I think honestly, I think it's unavoidable. I think you can't really, at this stage, you can't really prevent students from using AI. So I think the best option would be to change the way in which we evaluate them. So in terms of providing assignments that would require a student to go beyond just using AI. So something that tests their critical thinking, their understanding, as opposed to just general essay writing, for example, because it's highly likely that they will utilize AI. I mean, even a case where even if they structure their own manuscript or their own document and then they just use AI to improve their writing in terms of different sections, or if they just choose to copy and paste the entire thing, students are likely to use AI. I think at this stage it's going to be very difficult to try to escape that. So maybe we need to, evolve as well, evolve and restructure the way we approach student evaluation.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think one of the main things I also heard a lecturer said once is he tries to teach his students that if you use AI, your voice gets lost because it doesn't have context. So yeah, you would always want your voice to be heard. So I think that's an important thing to also highlight to your students. So yeah, thank you. I don't see, oh, I see there's some more questions. It's just congratulating the presenters on a wonderful presentations. Yeah, so there's also a question on Chat GPT Zero. So I think that is a tool that sometimes we use to detect AI use, and I think that is still sufficient to be able to detect that, right?
Yeah, I've used ChatGPT Zero as well, and I've also the best AI detection tool I've come across so far is Quillbot. I think that has been quite accurate in terms of identifying both ChatGPT as well as Anthropic, Claude, and a few others. But even that as well can be a bit inaccurate because I once took a paper that I wrote in 2015 and I put it in there and it also detected some AI, so it can be a bit unpredictable. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
really rely on it too much especially when it comes to having to penalize students. You may find that it might be not entirely accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. So if there's no other questions, yeah, I would just like to also thank you so much for availing yourself and sharing your insights as well. It was a pleasure listening to you, and yeah, I've learned a lot. So thank you so much for being here today. And then I think I would like then to end our workshop. We've come to the end. I can't believe it. So as we wrap up today's workshop, I want to thank all of you for joining us on this very important conversation. And I think we all still have a lot to learn. So we've journeyed together through this exciting possibilities that AI offers, from data analysis to decision-making support. I even used it once to help me keep my plants alive. So, I mean, the results are just endless. So I think there's one thing that we've learned is that while AI can help us write and analyze and even predict the future sometime, it can't replace the critical thinking, ethical grounding, and collaborative spirit that define good research. Well, at least not yet. Let's hope not. So I also just want to give a special thank you to our speakers, our panelists, and the organizers for making this event possible. Your insights have not only informed but inspired at least me. And to everyone who asked a question and made a comment, thank you so much for all your participation. So let's carry today's discussion forward in our own research practices with curiosity, caution, and a little bit of code. And lastly, if AI helped you take notes today, just remember to double check the spelling. So until next time, stay ethical, stay innovative, and also stay caffeinated. So thank you again for joining us, and goodbye.